Didn't know you were going to get all this, did you?
No, I didn't. I mean, that's what I was saying too.
Is the beauty of bottle and bond.
Yeah.
Bardstown Bourbon Company.
You never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of This Is My Bourbon Podcast. I'm Perry. I'm your host, and I got to be honest with you, didn't think I was going to have a crowd this big today when I woke up, but I am super excited to be at the Bottled and Bond kitchen at the Bardstown Bourbon Company with a great table of guests on the show. First off, I want to say thank you all so much for being here, but I'm going to just kind of go clockwise around the table and let everybody introduce themselves. So, David, if you want to go first.
David Mandell, President and CEO, and one of the founders of the Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Yes.
Jim Rutledge, Four Roses Master Distiller, retired.
Daniel Lind, one of the co-founders of Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Steve Nally, Master Distiller, Bardstown Bourbon Company.
And John Hargrove, Director of Operations here at Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Well, guys, thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to the show. This is kind of a first for me, having this many guests on all at one time. But I think we're going to have a great time. We're going to really enjoy this conversation. So first and foremost, I want to talk about where we are in this space. So, David, talk a little bit about the Bottled and Bond kitchen and its inception, because it's fairly new to this area and to the entire experience of the Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Yes, and again, thank you very much for having us. Bottle and Bond is our newest expression here and experience at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. It is really the second phase of where we are headed. But Bottle and Bond is a place that brings together the community of whiskey lovers and the community of Bardstown. So we are bringing together those that have been coming on the trail and those folks from this community that have helped, so much in the development of bourbon over the years.
Sure.
And so we're really excited to have this full-scale restaurant, bar, and tremendous whiskey library.
Right, and the fact that you're nestled right in the heart of bourbon country, too, I'm sure helps you out a little bit.
It is, and it's part of sort of the larger vision for the company, which is we've developed a Napa Valley-style destination experience, but we created our roots in our collaborative distilling program, which is our custom whiskey production program, which is run by Steve and John. So, we produce custom whiskey for 22 different customers, and that is kind of the unique engine. It's where we've created our credibility. Now we're creating our credibility in experiencing it, and of course, it's all a platform for the brands that are going to come from this wonderful place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve and John, talk a little bit, too, about some of the products that are coming out of here, specifically your whiskey.
So a lot of exciting products coming out. We have 2 out on the market right now. They're an MGP-style 21% rye base bourbon at 10 years, finished 18 months. One in a Muscat Mandell barrel and one in American Brandy barrel. And we did this collaboration with Copper and Kings out of Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, cool.
So very excited about that. Very excited about some other finished products we have with them going on right now. And while we have those collaborations going on, we have new collaborations that you'll see coming out with other customers here in the near future, along with some of our own internal brands that we're really excited to get out on the blending side. So we'll have something come out under our Fusion series here in the next year, where we'll have some internal product that was distilled here at Bardstown Bourbon Company and some blends with older stocks of whiskey that we have in inventory. So I'll let Steve talk a little bit more about the finishes that we have got going on, but really excited about what's going to be coming down the pipeline here in the next couple of years on the finished product side.
Absolutely.
And as you well know, the sources have kind of dried up. We have been lucky to find some good quality products. We're not just taking anything and putting it in a barrel and finish it. We start out with a really good product. Like John says, 21% rye is what we're using right now. Mm-hmm. But we've acquired a few others from some other companies too. And, we've got some that's being finished in wine barrels, some that's being finished in American Brandy barrels, and several other finishes that are coming about. And, and we're going in. Some of them are kind of pioneering that we really don't know what they're going to do, but we're going in and checking and making sure that they're coming along all right.
Sure.
And selecting the time frame as far as the first collaboration came out was 18 months old. The next one might be 6 months, or it might be a year, it might be 2 years. But we're trying until when it gets right, then we release them.
But so you guys just put in this beautiful big column still, too. So that means that you guys are going to be distilling your own product, right?
We are distilling our own product. We've been distilling some since the day we started with the collaboration program, or the customers that we've taken on. That's given us the ability to grow this big, this fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we started out with the idea of making 1.5 million proof gallons, and we kept getting customers come on that we had to expand to accommodate them. And right now we're saving about 10% of what we produce is ours. So we will be coming out, as John said, some of our infusion brands that come out with will be the first that we've come out that we're using some of our products. And then as it becomes older and becomes mature, then we'll release our kind of our flagship brand
Sure.
that we come out
Yeah.
with. That'll be ours.
And what's the timeline like on that? How far out are you from actually putting out your own distillate?
We have a 2-year-old product in the warehouse right now. We anticipate another 3 to 4 years, to get a 5-6-year-old product that will be a good product that we can fly solo with.
Great.
So to back up what Steve said, that 2-year-old brand that we'll be pulling out, we'll actually be blending that with that Maturette product he was
Okay.
talking about.
Yeah.
So we think for our 100% internal products, so we're 100% mashed here, fermented here, distilled here, we'll wait till start seriously looking at the 4-year mark, 5-year, 6-year,
Yeah.
and so on to come out with a brand under the Bardstown Bourbon label with 100% product that was produced from this facility.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think what's one of the things that's really interesting about Perry is what you see here is the core values that we stand for. Obviously, collaboration, transparency, working together. But what you see when you look across the brand spectrum is we have a collaborative series that we have developed. Now, that's what this brand collaboration launched. So we're doing this with a series of they tell the story of 2 great artists or 2 great companies making something that's really neat together. Then we have a series coming called Fusion, where it really represents our blending capabilities, where we're taking some of our, our age product and blending with some other fabulous product that wasn't made by us. And then we evolve into our core products, and they all live together. And that's really kind of the beauty. You get to see the full spectrum of everything that we're doing.
So let's step back just a little bit, too, and talk about the fact that what you guys have associated with your brand right now is sourced products. There are a lot of people who will look at a company who sources whiskey and kind of turn their nose up a little bit at them. Did you ever kind of face that, or did you ever care whether or not people
No, and I'll
felt
tell
that
you,
way?
here's why. Because the company is we are a celebration of the craft of making whiskey. So what we do is we really embrace all the aspects of it. And as long as you are transparent about where that product came from, it's like, do you always expect the chef to grow their own vegetables? And the answer is, of course not. You source some wonderful product, but it's about what you ultimately make. And you see that creativity through our collaborative series. Through our Fusion series, you see the blending, which is something, and I think that's coming now. And Jim, I would actually be interested in your perspective, too. The art of blending is something that is really important.
Well, you're absolutely right. Blending is an art, just like the art of distillation relative to yeast, fermentation, mashing. But that is an art, because you can take, example, 2 really, really good barrels, put them together, and it ends up not so good. But you can take this barrel this is okay, put them together, you might have something outstanding. So it takes time. It's something that you just can't select barrels and based on their individual characters and say, boy, this is going to be really good. You've got to experiment and try and evaluate what you have, and it is an art.
So with that, in the spirit of collaboration, I already got my mind running. We have Jim here, first time he's been on site. we have Steve here, so maybe we get together after this podcast and maybe we start to develop a product with those two minds, with the innovation behind that product between these two guys right here at the table.
Please. Please, and let me know when that becomes a thing, because I will be all in on it.
In one sense, we're kind of not sourcing product to our customers. We are custom producing them for them. And they come to us and we sit down and go through every aspect of the production, from the grain selection to the yeast to the cook temperatures, all parts of it. So we're actually custom producing product for them. We're not just making a product and selling it to them.
Right. That's incredible, too. I like that, because you don't see a whole lot of companies that are doing something that specific for their clients.
Exactly. And, we have 22 customers at the present. We're doing a total of 27 different mash bills. So to do that back and forth and to satisfy every customer is quite an ordeal.
So, and a lot goes into that customization, and with that customization comes transparency of our production also. So if you're a customer in our Bardstown Bourbon collaboration program, you can come on site for your production. We do pre-production meetings to nail down all the specifics of the production, grain procurement, barrel procurement, yeast strands, yeast procurement, like Steve said, how we cook up the mash, how we ferment as far as set temperatures, control temperatures, and then Jim hinted on the art of distillation. There's a lot of metrics that can be changed on your distillation column, on your doubler, that can produce a very different product. And with that, we really sit down with our customers and develop all that before production, and they're allowed to come on site. And then we also package up all those key metrics I just went over, so they can really come in and look at the header pressures on our steam lines. They can come in and look at the cycle times on our cooks, the temperature, the deltas and the temperatures on our cooks, our fermentations, and then on the distillation, our beer feed, what we're running our low wines at, our high wines, our low wine condensers, how we control our low wine condensers. So any part of the process, they will have transparency, and we package that up and provide that to them at the conclusion of their production run.
So collaboration is not just a brand name; it is kind of a mantra for the Bardstown Bourbon
It is in the
Company
true
then.
sense,
Yeah.
and that's just on the production side. One side we haven't touched on yet is the organoleptic, the sensory side of it. So we have an organoleptic team here on site, which does all the sensory for all the distillate that we make, the maturate that we take out of the warehouses. But we have to get our team aligned with other technical teams through their organoleptic and sensory programs also, so we're on the same page when we're judging their distillates that we're producing.
And I think, too, that's incredible, too, is that you are so transparent in the way that you produce your whiskey. And,
Right.
And the way that you communicate, too.
Right, and that transparency. So we have 22 customers in our program. I deal with 14, 15 different technical teams out of those 22 different customers. So with that comes a transfer of knowledge between our teams and their teams. So where most new startups have a bit of a learning curve, with the talent pool that we have been able to pull from here in Bardstown, Kentucky, and that business model aspect of working with different technical teams with different companies, we have really absolved that learning curve in a matter of less than a year. So out on the production floor, our operators have an average experience of 15 years of distillery experience across the board on our operations. If you go out there, you won't see one person that did not come from a distillery out on our production floor.
So I want to take a step back just a second, because I have a whole lot of stuff on the table in front of me that I feel needs to be discussed. First and foremost, let's talk about the cocktails that I have before me. Talk about what they are and what has gone into them and the creation behind them, because first off, they're really good.
Well, it's one of the most important things, obviously, for us in creating Bottle & Bond was to have a fabulous culinary team and a great beverage team. And our beverage team, Dan Calloway, is the GM of Decca in Louisville. He joined us, built our beverage and our beverage ambassadors. Our culinary team is run by Chef Felix Mazzo from the Greenbrier, West Virginia.
Great.
We have 20 culinary students that come from South Africa, the Philippines, and India. State Department program that we house them. We provide an educational component to it and transportation. And John Donnelly, J.D. Donnelly, is our executive director of food and beverage, came from Matchbox, came from Buford Inn. I mean, amazing team, and everybody's moved here to Bardstown. But in front of you You have our signature Manhattan that's made with an 8-year-old Hirsch bourbon. Hirsch is a company that's part of our collaborative distilling program. We produce that product going forward. It's got two different blends, a blend of two different vermouths, a Cynar and an Antica formula, and our own blend of bitters. And then, of course, this is called Smokey and the Bandit, which is Bellmead bourbon, which we also produce here as collaborative partner, with a great mezcal, fresh vanilla bean, and black pepper. Two new additions to the menu, but we have really creative team.
Also, we're passing around dishes as we converge.
Gnocchi.
Too.
This is a fresh potato gnocchi,
gnocchi
with mushroom sauce, Brussels sprouts with thick cut bacon and bourbon glaze, chicken fried oysters. Everything we do here is made scratch every day by the team. We fly in the seafood. If we can get the ingredients locally, we get them. But the whole concept behind Bottle & Bond is refined simplicity. Simple dishes made extremely well with the best ingredients in an environment that is not pretentious. It's designed to bring people together, have fun, and just have an enjoy conversation.
And if you're not having fun, what are you doing?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, that's exactly the point, isn't it?
So I want to touch on, too, because, Jim, I'm happy that you're sitting down with us, and it was just kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing that you were here, and we were like, oh, well, can we get Jim Rutledge to sit down with us as well? So what is your relationship like with these guys? How did you kind of get to know them and, work with them?
But, I've met several people I didn't know prior to coming here, but Steve and I go back, close to 25 years, I guess, and Maker's Mark and myself at Four Roses. And, I've just toured part of the distillery. It's absolutely beautiful. I was telling them, walking through it up there, I love to see a new distillery. It's so much easier to start like they did here from scratch, build everything new, rather than try to retrofit and some of the old equipment at some of the older distilleries.
Sure.
We have 8 major distilleries in Kentucky that still produce about 95% or more of the bourbon produced and sold in the U.S. But the upcoming distilleries like Bardstown Bourbon Company here and some of the others, it's amazing to me. I'm doing some consulting work at one of the relatively new distilleries, and everywhere I go, they say, we sold out of we're out of capacity practically by the time we start up. I know Steve told me a few years ago when you were starting up that they're out of capacity before we ever distilled the first drop. And it's amazing, just the bourbon industry. It's absolutely on fire. Everybody's heard that by now. But the amazing part to me is when you go back to about 1968, we had about close to 8.9 million barrels in inventory, which is just one measure of the growth of the industry. And just a few weeks ago, it was announced that we're over 7.5 million barrels in Kentucky. But back then, about 10% of those barrels were designated for international markets, where today it's about 40%. So we've got a long way to go just to catch up to back then.
Sure.
And the international markets, if China ever really opens up, we don't have enough capacity just to fill China. India's a new market. Japan's been a very healthy market for many years, so I don't think you can really anticipate much growth there. Australia's a great market.
Yeah.
But outside the U.S., and what's, to me, I can go back to meetings in the early 80s when at that time I was working in New York, Seagram's corporate headquarters, who owned Four Roses, and trying to get bourbon back in, Four Roses bourbon back in the U.S. And,
Right.
And I can remember seeing a pie chart on a PowerPoint presentation that I can't remember. I may be off a little bit, but not much. I think of the whiskeys of the world, Scotch was about 37.3 or 4. Bourbon was only about 6.7. And so, and people's attitude was, we don't stand a chance. Look at the Scotch market.
Right.
And I said, look at the opportunity to grow. And that's what's happening. We go around the world now, people are finally beginning to realize, hey, there's another whiskey in this world besides Scotch, and it's bourbon, and especially Kentucky bourbon.
Do you feel like, because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. It seemed like to me that in that period in the 80s, the dark period, when bourbon still was not as popular as it is now, it seemed like all of the master distillers at that time independently said, we are going to remarket this product and we're going to make it big again. And it seemed to kind of work in a way that produced something that people wanted to be a part of. Do you feel that was kind of that energy at the time, or, were you just trying to do business?
Well, I think if at any time in history, if you talk to a master distiller, hey, we make the greatest bourbon or whiskey or rye there is, and people have got to like it. We know what we're putting in a barrel and what can be put in a bottle. So I'm not sure that's. I don't know what to say about that other than we've always felt that way.
Sure.
Now, in long-range planning, we're planning, if it's a 6-year-old bourbon, of course, you've got to look at the forecast, and it's not, it's stretching the imagination to say it's an educated guess. It's a guess down the road where you're going to be in 6, 7, 8 years, depending on the age of the product, weighing that against your current barrel inventories, and then the difference is what we need to produce right now. And, of course, our industry has been sliding since the late 60s.
Sure.
Every year, so we were projecting for this slide. And I can remember at that time, Four Roses in Japan, the top 2 bourbons in Japan were Four Roses or I.W. Harper. And it was back and forth. Every other year, it seems like one was the top-selling brand. But in '88, the Japanese market didn't show some signs of growth. It shot through the roof.
Right.
But our industry, especially those 2 brands, distilleries, with our pants down. And I was up in New York doing the long-range planning, distillery planning for all Seagram distilleries in the U.S. at the time. And I ended up selling, Seagram had, in addition to Four Roses, which was only an international brand, we had brands like Eagle Rare, Antique, Benchmark, Henry McKenna, and another brand I can't recall right now. I was the one who approached Seagram marketing and sales executives, and we need to sell these brands. We're not doing well. We're not promoting them. We're not standing behind them, because Seagram was not a bourbon company. It was primarily a blended whiskey company.
Right.
So we sold those barrels to devote, and some barrel inventory went with them, of course, but what was left we could devote to the one global growth market back then. And that was Japan. That was the first sign of growth. And in the early 90s, that decline that we'd seen over 20, 25 years started to slow down. And, we were excited. I was on the board of the Kentucky Distillers Association back then. We were excited just to see the business level out. We're not declining,
Sure.
We're leveling out. And then by the mid-90s, there were some trickles of growth. There was signs of growth. It was growing a little bit. And, we were all very optimistic. And we all know what's happened recently. And people say, well, when's, and all through those years, and I can attest to it, that when you do long-range planning, the industry's always up or down. It's like a roller coaster ride. And the only time the barrel inventories are ever in alignment is when on the way up or on the way down. And but since that time, since in this century, the growth is absolutely amazing. And like I previously mentioned, we're not up to where we were in barrel inventories back in the late 60s. And the potential for growth just domestically, and then when you look at the new markets globally, whether it be established markets, UK, they're growing, France is growing, Spain's
Sure.
growing, but the new markets in India, China, and other countries around the world, bourbon is on fire, and it's going to be here. It's not here and gone like it used to be.
Sure.
It's here to stay for many, many years to come.
And that gives me hope for, because I every now and then take a step back and I look at the projection of the bourbon boom, and I go, it's the end has got to be around the corner. But I hear conversations like this. I hear people who are that passionate about it, and I go, I'm fine. Same thing with Fred Minnick. I sit down with Fred Minnick, and he talks, so highly and encouraging about the bourbon industry and the bourbon market, and I'm just like, I'm not worried anymore.
And if you look at what, the expansion that is taking place, if you look at the expansion that's taking place with all of the legacy distilleries, the amount of capital they're putting in and expanding them, you look at the success of our collaborative distilling program and the fact that, we're producing 4 brands. These are brands that didn't have distilleries behind them. We also produce for several of the, the larger companies, across the globe as well, again, tied to great brands. But that growth is there.
Yeah.
And everyone would have to be wrong in order for there to be a very significant change. You'd also, when you look at the trends, the growth of cocktails, the growth of, premiumization, it's going across the globe. And some of that international growth hasn't even hit yet.
But internationally, I mean, that sounds like it's a market that at this point is kind of untapped. I mean, there may be interest, but I mean, it seems like we're still kind of working to, find where people really enjoy what Kentucky is doing with bourbon, or just the United States is doing with bourbon. So it is that expansion going to be a key factor in keeping the bourbon boom alive?
Well, I don't know if it's about keeping it alive. The question is going to be how much more does it grow and how much do we have? And I think, again, it's when you look at what some of the larger companies are preparing for, they have not even made inroads into, countries like China and into India.
Sure.
One, because they don't have enough product to do it. And, they just have not gone there yet, just a little bit. And so if those markets get a taste for bourbon, if it begins to move, a couple points away from Scotch to bourbon, I think from the studies that we've seen, there's not even enough resting right now in Kentucky to handle it. So it just depends on the perspective.
Sure. Let's talk to a little bit more about the product that's coming out of Bardstown Bourbon Company. One of the things that I always am enticed by with bourbon is the past and how the past seems to be shaping the future. So what is it about the past that you have found is inspiring you moving forward with the products that are coming out of the Bardstown Bourbon Company?
So I think that's a twofold question. I think what we have special here is Steve Nally's experience. He's been in the industry 46 years, and me, a relative newcomer to the business, more of the science background, where Steve has worked every position in the distillery, true and tried master distiller that knows every part of the process. And then I come from the manufacturing business where I have a technical background. So you kind of have an art meet science here at this facility, and you need both to thrive and make a quality product. So the art of it is Steve testing the match rate, blending, like Jim hinted on earlier. You can have 2 medium quality barrels, put them together, have a great blend. You can have 2 great barrels, put them together, and you have a terrible blend, to say the least. That's the art of it. The arts of it, knowing he'll test the grain, do sensory on the grain coming in, and then the science aspect of it, the GC analysis of it, the supporting instrumentation equipment that you would see in our process, that transparency I was talking about into the process. We have done significant capital investment on a lot of that automation, and still respecting the art of the whiskey and bourbon making process. So I think what we have very special here is the technical aspect of it, and then respecting the traditional aspect of it. And we don't want to take anything away from the traditional. We just want to push the envelope on the technical aspect of it for quality reasons and for efficiency reasons. So I think it's a great balance what we have going on here, and I think that's going to be reflected in our products that come out in the future.
And I think another thing that's really changed drastically for us as producers has been the consumer's demand. It went from years ago, the cheaper products that people just bought really didn't appreciate the flavor or the taste of it. Then it got into people, enjoyed the product as a sipping product. They take it neat over ice, and now it's starting to swing into cocktails, and that demand creates a lot of new products. You know, you want products that will carry into that cocktail and make it really nice. And, you know, a Maker's Mark or a high-end Heaven Hill or something might not work well in that cocktail, where a 95 rye or some other product will. So that's another demand that's being imposed on us as producers, that the consumer has brought forth and demanded.
So it sounds like you have a very specific idea or mission for your whiskeys that you're going to be producing. Try to put that into words if you can. What is your goal with everything that you are producing at the Bardstown Bourbon Company?
We're producing products that, one, will be a good sipping product, and also some of the products that we have out will be good to mix into cocktails. So we have more than just one product coming out that can be used for different cocktails or different reasons.
Yeah, and I think our brands are kind of representative of the specifics that we're coming out with. We're going to have a collaborative series brands. You already see 2 finished products out on the market with it. So it's really a story of a true master of the craft working with another master of that craft, whether it be an Armagnac house, a cognac house, a winery, or another distillery. Then we have our fusion series where we will take pride in the blending. That's where that art comes in. And then we'll have our Bardstown Bourbon flagship label, where we'll have the sipping whiskey that he's talking about. We're at 100% produced whiskey here at this facility. So we are specific, but we are covering multiple brands with that specificity there. So,
and the thing I just top that all off with, what makes us different from everybody else is what you have is the experience, what we have learned, the knowledge sharing that's taking place in that collaborative distilling program is what is ending up in the bottle when we're making our own products. And that is what is so exciting. Never before have you had the number of companies, 22 different customers with their teams working with us, the type of knowledge sharing that's taking place in that distillery, and it is tremendous, where we are all learning from each other. That whole community is working together in one way or another in that program, and that is resulting in not only great products for them, but it's also resulting in phenomenal products for us.
Right, and that kind of goes back to this idea of collaboration. So was collaboration something that was, crucial to your mindset when you were developing the Bardstown Bourbon Company, or was that just kind of something that happened along the way?
It's probably a little bit of both, but it's an evolutionary story, and Dan, who I'll just turn over to here for a second too, who is my partner in this, was here from the beginning as this project developed. As we evolved, we saw this desire and need for not only the program, but we actually saw this larger vision for let's bring this whole community together, and that's what we're going to be all about.
There's not much to add to that. I guess I would just say that, we didn't want to just come in and copy what had been done before. And so as we were learning from people about how you could put together a business, how you could get into this business, this started to develop.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we like to say, no made-up stories, no hidden legends. We were faced when we started with the concept of, do we buy an old distillery and try to refurbish it?
Right.
Do we try to bring back a legacy brand? Do we try to create something based on history? Well, and Dan and myself and a couple of us, we don't have any grandparents in the distilling industry. There wasn't any legacy there. And so as we kind of began to think about it, it was sort of, now let's go the complete opposite direction. Let's make this a place that is about the craft of making whiskey, transparent, open, and then let's celebrate the community. And so you see that openness, you see that transparency in the design. It flows through every aspect of what we're doing. And we truly believe that we're stronger, we are better as we bring people together. And look at this, we're sitting in this restaurant. It's completely packed.
Packed, yeah.
And what are people getting here? they can drink anything. We've got a great wine program. We have 400 different vintage bourbons. We have over 400 bourbons and whiskeys from around the world. You can have great cocktails. And so it's really about experiencing. And part of that experience is enjoying what you want when you want it. And guess what? It might not always be bourbon.
On that note of cultivating that experience, Fred Minnick was a big part in, a huge part, yeah, in establishing your vintage whiskey collection.
Correct.
Here. How did Fred get involved in this process then?
Well, we had a great relationship with Fred going back a long time when we got in this. And when the Kentucky legislature gave us the flexibility to buy vintage spirits that are out of circulation from the private collector, we knew exactly who we were going to. And we sat down with Fred and we said, you know what, let's curate a collection together, then let's bring it in here and let's offer it to the public. And let's use that, going back to John and Steve's point, that's another manifestation of respecting art and science. It's about, that vintage collection in here brings us to the past, and we look at it and we try it, and we're trying that with the consumer against new things, and it starts discussions about, well, how did they make this product so great at this point, or
right.
Why is this one so bad, from this period of time. And so you have these conversations about, just because it's old doesn't mean it's great. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's good. So it's all about kind of the bringing those two together, and Fred was instrumental in it. He's curated the collection.
Sure, and none of those bad whiskeys came from Four Roses, right?
Not that we have ever found.
Not for a long time, anyway.
So I think what's really cool, too, is that we have at the table right now two people who are so steeped in, and I am looking right at you when I'm talking about this, Steve, steeped in the history of bourbon, and we're so ingrained in making it what it is today. So, Steve, I have to ask you, what was the experience at Maker's Mark that most shaped you into the master distiller that you are today?
I think going back to then, it was everything that was done for a reason. When I first started, I questioned a lot of it, and it was a reason behind it, and the reason was to add exactly the same amount of grain, to cook to exactly the same temperatures. It was all done to produce exactly the same product in the end.
Right.
And if you vary any one of those, it can totally change the product. And I think I had the privilege of working with and under some of the pioneers, some of the legends of the industry, and learning from them why this is done, why it's cooked this way, why it's processed this way, why it's aged this way. Everything about it is done for a reason. It's not just thrown together and fermented and distilled and put in a barrel. It's precisely done.
So from that, do you look at the current state of the bourbon industry and see that same energy, that same passion that was kind of instilled in you through asking those questions and wanting to learn more about bourbon?
I think it's yes and no. I think you can go to the market and purchase products, and you can open them and taste them, and you can pretty well tell whether they've been done the right way or whether they've been done the wrong way. So, if you go and try it, it doesn't take long to figure out who knows what they're doing, who does not know.
So what encourages you to continue working in this industry then? Is it the fact that you feel like you can make another mark on an unintentional pun there with Maker's Mark, but
the reason I continue to do it is I love it. It's been something that from day one I've always enjoyed going to work. I enjoy talking about it. So I just love the industry. I love the people in the industry. Just like Jim said earlier, we've known each other for 35 years or so.
Sure.
And we are friends. And, there's a lot of distillers, a lot of people in the industry that I can really call a friend. And to me, there's not many industries in the world that have this same relationship intercompany. So that's one thing that's held me to it.
And is that kind of what brought you here too? Was just your love for bourbon, and specifically to the Bardstown Bourbon Company?
That and the vision that was presented in the get-go, in the initial part of it, was to develop a new company and develop, part of the process that we're doing now was developed on the fly. We started out wanting to make a product, supplementing it with some collaboration with other people, and that part of it has grown to cause us to expand to quadruple in less than 2 years. So that part of it is just the demand that's out in the company. And, sometimes it's hard to hold back enough for yourself. But, we are.
Let me brag about Steve just for a second, if you
Please.
don't mind, because I'll tell you, there are very few master distillers, obviously, left. And there are very few master distillers that, at their stage of the game, when Steve came in, he had been there, he had done it, he had built Wyoming whiskey, that would come in and say, you know what, we're going to make 27 different mash bills in one facility. And so that's not necessarily what you see in many people of, Steve's background. And it's a real credit and a testament to Steve and John working together, because we brought a level of customer service and attention to the art of making whiskey for others and working with us that has never existed before in the industry. People say, is it contract production? No, it's not contract production. It's collaborative, because they work with us and then see this facility, this becomes their home. So when you look in retail there, all those brands, we make those going forward. It's incorporated. Then they can come here. They can tell their story. They can use the facility to entertain. And so it's a way, and it's really a new model in the market to allow, great brands that have developed over time that didn't have distilleries behind them, also allow other companies to do really innovative things. And we do a lot of innovation as well.
Sorry, she just walked away with a Heaven Hill decanter from what I'm assuming is the 60s or 70s, and it just caught my eye.
That's just called lunch.
That's just how it goes.
It's just called lunch.
So what is the interplay between you and Steve, John, or you and John, Steve? What is how do you communicate in terms of what you want going forward as master distillers here?
I think it's truly in the spirit of collaboration. It's a collaboration between us. I mean, we drive each other to improve the process and to improve the quality. Obviously, Steve is a wealth of knowledge for me to lean on, for our whole team to lean on in general. So he'll check me a lot of the times when I get some of my wild ideas to try it out. So, I always look for him. I look for his advice, and I continue to learn from him. My office is 2 feet away from him on a daily basis, so I'm really fortunate to be in this company, in this industry, learning from somebody as esteemed as Steve, and also being involved with other distillers, other consultants in the business at this level of the game right now. So the knowledge being transferred here is bar none. You will not get it anywhere else.
Does John talk you up that much in person, like on a day-to-day basis, or
Yeah,
is this just
I'm forced to. I won't let him out of his office till he does. But what he said is true, and we go over constantly processes, and if there's a flavor or something that's in the product, we'll sit down and talk about it and see how we can adjust something to make it better, something to adjust it to make it taste like we want it to taste. Because with all the electronics and the automation that John knows about, which I don't, I came from a background of manual everything, and to incorporate that in together to make it work. And a lot of that feeds the information that's fed to the customer. If they demand some of this, and he's able to produce it, where it would take me a month to sit down and produce what they asked for. So it's the ability to put both of those together to make the product that we're doing. And when we change recipes 3 or 4 times a week, you have to have that speed and that knowledge and the electronics to do that.
And I want to go back a little bit to you just made a comment about the communication that goes on between you and your clients, and I think that again that transparency is so crucial to encouraging you to produce really high quality products. And I think that's what's most exciting too about moving forward with you all and seeing what's going to be coming out of the Bardstown
Right,
company.
and our customers, frankly, they demand it, and we're delivering it on it. So we make for some of the largest craft distillers in the world, up to the largest in the top 5 spirits producers in the world right now. So they've already have products out in the market that are tried and true. So to start distilling in 2016, come to our business and work with us, they want some assurances, obviously. And obviously we can provide that in the production process, the organoleptic evaluations that we do our distillates, and the overall interaction we have with their technical teams. So that's what drives a lot of the true transparency, because we want our customers to make this their home. We want them to be able to talk about it. We want their sales team to be able to come talk about it when they go out to all different states and talk about their products. So you can have sales teams meetings here if you're one of our customers. You can really bring in and teach your whole team about how your product is produced at Bardstown Bourbon Company. And we don't want any hidden legends, like David said. We want facts and we want transparency, and that drives the confidence of our customers to produce here with us.
Absolutely, too.
And that's one thing that we had to realize early on, was that we were producing a product for our customers. It's not necessarily something
Sure.
that we would produce for ourselves, and it's all about the flavor profile. They already have a product on the market. We're trying to duplicate that product, and whether it's a condenser temperature or any minor thing that you might think might be very important to developing that flavor.
So let's talk to more about not just collaboration with whiskey, but collaboration inside the Bardstown Bourbon Company. And I specifically want to touch on, too, the Bottled and Bond kitchen and the food that's coming out of you, too. So moving forward with some of the products that are going to be your own distillate out of this company, do you see more food pairing with the whiskey that's going to be produced here, or the products that are going to be produced here? What do you see moving forward?
I think you see, a huge spectrum of what is possible. And so, of course, yes, we're looking at pairings and dinners, but it goes really beyond that. It starts with the culinary team working with the beverage team, working with the distilling team. And for the first time, you in a spirits company, you have in-house these 3 teams that are experts in each one of their areas, and each one of these areas plays such an important role in our overall enjoyment of life, everyday life. Why are we doing this? When are we drinking? We're usually eating, enjoying a great meal. We're either having a cocktail, we're drinking it straight. All these things are so important. That's why we eat and drink at dinner or at lunch. And so now you got to take these things together, and for the company. So when we're doing this, and John and Steve have been leading it, they're working with our beverage team. They have a different, excellent mixologist, incredible team. Some of the obvious stuff you're making here, they have different flavor profiles. They're trying things. They're helping the team blend. They go back and forth. They do blind tastings. They test each other. They're trying, they're experimenting. Same thing with the culinary team. So with this platform, we're harnessing all of this creativity. And so can I tell you exactly how it's going to turn out? No. But I can tell you we're getting everybody involved, and it's going to result in some remarkable things that are going to make us different from everybody else.
Is this your canvas? Do you consider yourself as and I am kind of putting this title on you, as an artist in this medium? Is this your canvas?
No, what I would say is this is a platform. And so the platform, we have built the team, and the team in this company is a story about the people that have come from all over the place to come here and join us to help make this the launching pad. And that's what it is. It's the launching pad for all the things that are going to come. And so we're really excited about it.
So it's in some sense a stepping stone.
It's exactly, well, that's right. It's foundational.
Yeah.
So in order to, have, the brands that are going to come from us, and to bring people here and to kind of take this to the world, you've got to start by creating your credibility, which we did in building this incredible distilling team We had to create our experiential credibility by building a culinary team and a beverage team. And now they're all working together to not only make the brands for our customers, but for ourselves.
Sure.
And so that's where we're headed.
And I'm going to kind of extend this question then to John and Steve and Jim. Do you consider yourselves artists in the world of bourbon? Because I think that there is so much room for creativity, you know, in producing something that people can consume in a reasonable manner to where they can enjoy it. But do you consider yourselves artists? Everybody's silent.
I'm looking at Jim and Steve to answer this one.
Okay. All right. You know, Steve touched on it early. He goes back to the time when everything was done manually.
Yeah.
I started in the business in 1966, and I think my first stint as a shift supervisor in the distillery is probably 1969, I think. And I can remember if we wanted to change the beer flow for one reason or another, say from 3,800 gallons an hour to 4,000 gallons an hour. So we go up and manually turn the valves. We had pencil marks all over the place and with numbers on it. And then we had charts on the wall that would for a 24-hour period. So it might take an hour or two to get everything in balance. Today we walk in and we want to go from 3,800 gallons an hour to 4,000. We punch it in and boom, it's there. So, you know, and you can say about the whole process. And so I've always said, you know, we've come light years since just in such a short time since I've started. Now, looking around the table, only Steve thinks that's not a short time. But, you know, we've come a long, long way, but the art will always be there. That's the part I love. Technology helps us be more consistent day in, day out. And but being able to walk up to a fermenter, and I've always said I used all five senses. You know, I look at the top of the fermenter. You know, I know whether it looks right or wrong. I smell it, stick my finger in it, and I taste it. I feel about what the temperature is. So I've used four senses there, and then the fifth sense of hearing. Got to listen to what those other four senses have told me, and I probably couldn't do it right now, but back at Four Roses when I was doing it on a regular basis, I could usually tell in roughly an 80-hour fermentation period within a couple of hours about how old that fermenter was, and if that wasn't right, I knew something was wrong. If I looked at the top of it and didn't just see a fine head of foam on top of it, if I saw, you know, a foot of foam or 4 inches of crust, I knew the bacteria was running rapid in some way, and we had to correct it. But and that's part of the art of the business. And
Sure.
Even from the beginning, you know, people think, well, corn's corn, you know, just get any corn in. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. You can have corn come in with just the slightest hint of, for example, must.
Sure.
Or mold. And that could destroy the whole process. But you have to, and that's, I guess it's an art, being able to smell that and way, way, way back in the distance. You say, boy, I think there's a hint of must here, and we're going to reject this load. But everything from the beginning of the process, from the selection, the approval of the grains, milling, mashing, fermentation, and distillation, you know, it's, like I said, technologies have come light years, but it's the art that makes, to me, you know whether it's good or bad before it ever gets through the still.
I was just going to say, I know that you extended this question to everybody. It's probably a problem if your finance guy thinks of himself as an artist. So, no, I'm not an artist.
I want to touch a little bit on what Jim said. You know, when I was coming up, I actually worked every job there was at Maker's Mark. So, you know, I kind of learned the system from the inside out. And like he said, you could tell, you know, from the minute that the grain samples came into the lab, to whether the grain was acceptable or not. And I remember one time when a load came in and it had a fuel smell to it. Well, we got to checking back, and it was as simple as when they were loading the truck, the exhaust of the tractor was blowing into it, so that smell came all the way to the distillery in that load of grain. Of course, it was rejected, but it's saying things that are so simple that can happen. And I kind of think by having to do it manual for so many years that you really know what was happening. When I tweaked that valve just a 16th of a turn, that accounted for so many degrees in temperature or a certain speed of the flow. So now when you punch it in a button, do the people that's doing that really know what they're doing? I'm just typing in a number. I don't know what it's doing downstream from it. So to some extent, the manual is a little bit better as far as people remembering or knowing exactly what they were doing.
Right. And to kind of piggyback off of that, too, I am by trade a graphic designer. But, graphic design today is all computer-based. But, up until 20 years ago, it was all manual. And so, if you had type that needed to be set out, you had to do it all by hand. And then, you had to layer different sheets of film so that you could get the right color for it. And, it just seems, I get what you're saying in terms of like what the advancements have done for efficiency, but not necessarily for the artistry of this industry. So,
yeah, I see what you mean. I agree with that's kind of goes back to the fact that you appreciate what went into that graphics. Or if you just punch it in a computer, you really don't know.
Well, guys, this has been do you have something else to say, Dave? You want to go ahead? No? Okay. This has been a great panel. I'm so happy that I've been able to have all of you all sitting around and chatting, not just about the Bardstown Bourbon Company and Bottled and Bond, but just kind of this heritage that we've all, really enjoyed with bourbon. But I just want to say thank you all so much for sitting down with me. And
we really appreciate you coming here.
Absolutely.
And, that's what this is all about. It's really all about just getting everybody together and talking about the
Yeah.
enjoyment and creation of bourbon and whiskey. And
Yeah.
Jim, thank you for joining us. too.
yeah, Jim,
My
my
pleasure.
goodness. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for wanting to hang out with us for a little bit. Just to wrap up real quick, if you want to follow up with us on social media, we are at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you would like to check out our merch and apparel, it's bourbonshop.threadless.com. Send questions or comments to thisismybourbonshop@gmail.com. Leave us a 5-star rate and review on iTunes. And then if you would like to financially support us, you can head to patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast for as little as $1 a month. You get some really cool content that normal listeners don't have access to. I will see you next week. I appreciate you guys listening. But until then, I'm Perry, and this is My Bourbon Podcast.